You are now listening to two dudes in their 30s with Adam and Greg. They're gonna talk about stuff, and you're gonna listen. Okay, got it. Good. Let's start the show.
What's going on, man?
What's going on?
Oh, doing good. Relaxing a little bit.
Yeah. Are you hiding out there?
Yeah, I'm literally like laying down on the floor at my in-laws' home in the corner.
Are you at Teresa's parents'?
Yeah.
Did you guys go up there this
they were
morning?
kind enough to let us. Yeah, we got up here this morning.
Yeah.
Kind enough to let us stay for a night. I think a night or two, and then we get our apartment opened up. So
When are you
it'll work out.
moving in? To the
What's
apartment?
that?
When are you moving into the apartment?
Oh, the first of May. So
Oh, so
I
Tuesday.
think Tuesday. Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, so
What was I gonna say? Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I have an awesome news story if we want to do that segment again.
Oh God. First of all, when did you guys get back into town?
Not last night, but the night before, like
Friday
super late
night.
on Friday night. Yeah.
Were you just happy to
Like-
were you just happy to just like pull in the driveway and be done with it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like almost, I don't know, 17 days or something like that. We were on the road and did a little bit over 7,000 miles, I think. It was crazy. I feel for the people like Create Wonder and Dirty Darlings. They have to have a lot more challenges than they told us. It's like it was hard. We had a lot of fun,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But there was definitely a lot of challenges and bumps in the road.
It seemed like once you guys hit like the last few days, you were just like on a mission to just get back.
Oh my God, we hit.
Were you
like,
planning
the
on
eastern-
stopping like in the Midwest at some point beforehand and you just decided not to, or are you just going to kind of do stuff out west and then just from there come home?
Yeah, from Denver back was kind of our thing. It's literally like flatlands. There's nothing to see, nothing to do. So that was kind of our mission. Once we hit kind of like the Denver area, just hightail it home,
Yeah.
do like 12-hour days, and I don't know, just get back.
Did you do most of the driving
So we
or did you
did
split
that.
it up?
Towards the end, we split it up a lot. It was nice to kind of sit in the passenger seat for a little while
Yeah.
and close my eyes. And we actually like rented a book from Cracker Barrel, which is I highly, if you're not doing a podcast, if you're not listening to us on a podcast, do a book by cassette or whatever and by tape and listen to that. It was broke it up really nice.
So now you're back in town. What's the plan? When do you start work? Next week?
Yeah, we have a wedding this week out in Rochester, so we got to drive like 4 hours back out there and
I'm
4
sure.
hours
I'm sure you're looking forward to doing that, getting back in the car
Uh,
again.
I'm dreading it, man.
You know what though? I
guess
guess I would think though, like at least knowing that it's just like it's a 3-hour trip and you're going and you're done, as opposed to like the dauntingness of driving all the way back. It probably makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
But you probably don't want to get back in that car again. At least will you have the dog or no?
I don't know. We got to figure out if we're gonna put her in like a boarding sort of thing or what.
Yeah.
Because she's a little high strung.
Tough. We made it, but that's tough for the dog.
Yeah, it worked out. It's like we were packed in there like sardines. That car was packed like a packed meal going over the Himalayas.
Well, once you got your stuff in Utah, then it was really like jammed, right?
Yeah, it was something. Thank God I had a buddy. We actually met up in Moab, Utah. He randomly was out there and helped us like load the car up.
That's cool.
Big thanks to Andy. Yeah.
All right, what's the story?
All right, let me look this up. My sister-in-law, Andrea, actually told us about this, and I couldn't believe it. I had to look it up myself. So on the Washington Post, it's written by Amy B. Wang. Want to make sure she gets credit because it's funny. It says a 12-year-old in Australia had a fight with his mom and ran away to a resort in Bali. It says paging Macaulay Culkin. In an incident reminiscent of Home Alone sequel, a 12-year-old boy in Australia ran away from home last month after an argument with his mother and flew to Bali by himself using his parents' credit card. Let me stop right there. I would beat my kid's butt so bad if they did this.
It's pretty impressive though that like you said 12-year-old that they could actually pull that off and do it. I would never have had that. I would even have known how to use that when I was that age nor would I would have been probably scared that something would have happened to me. I would have never done something like that. But
Oh my God. It says once on an Indonesian island near 3,000 miles away from his home in Sydney, the child managed to check into a room at a beachside resort where he stayed 4 days. There he reportedly drank a beer, enjoyed the hotel pool, and at least once flaunted his solo adventure on social media. It's like this kid is it's just
crazy,
too much.
crazy.
He ended up riding his scooter, it said, to the airport. His little like push one foot push scooter. Like, how in the world did they let this child on an airplane
Nuts,
unaccompanied?
nuts.
Yeah. Racked up $6,000 of expenses.
6 grand.
6 grand, man.
He was
Ah,
wow. I mean, I know
yeah.
getting to Bali is not cheap, but I think I don't know geography that well, but it's not that. I mean, it's closer to like Australia than it would be for
Australia.
us trying to
Yeah.
get there. Correct?
Yeah. Apparently, like his mom and
That's not
dad
going to
had
make
to
me sound smart.
fly.
But, oh well.
Apparently, his mom and dad had to fly into Bali and pick him up, and
Oh
I
yeah,
think that's where the additional expenses occurred. I think he spent like 3 grand himself, and they had to drop like another three to go get him.
crazy.
Yeah.
How about this?
Ah,
How about this Golden State Killer? Did you see this?
I did. Yeah.
That's
Tell
wild.
me about it.
This guy he murdered like at least 12 people and like had like a ton of rapes, which is just disgusting. 45 at least, maybe.
Oh my God.
And like all sorts of home break-ins apparently, like all over California.
Hmm.
He'd been like on the run. Well, not on the run. They didn't know who he was, but like for 40 years or something before they found him. It's like he was doing stuff like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't even know. It's like nuts. Since the early 70s, he had been like doing all this stuff. I think he was a cop at one point or something.
Yeah, it said that he was a police officer. Like I didn't hear how they found out that it was him though. Did you find out that
I
part?
think they had some DNA or something and eventually connected it back to him or
Ah,
something like that. Um,
wow.
yeah, it's just like
For 40 years you're burying that burden and
crazy.
carrying that around with you, and then you get caught.
It's nuts.
I'd feel like at some point he has to feel a little bit of relief that finally this is off his chest or whatever, but
Ugh,
at the same
I don't
time
even know.
that's crazy to carry that around for 40 years with you.
Yeah,
What a monster.
nuts. I guess the break came that after this retired investigator searched a free do-it-yourself genealogy website called GED GED Match.
Huh.
According to the Sacramento Bee, the site is a place for people to find long lost relatives and has a database of 800,000 DNA profiles.
Oh my God. So he got caught randomly,
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much.
What, he was like trying to find his own lineage?
Yeah, I don't even know.
That's weird.
He's a former police officer with who was fired when he was caught shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent from a hardware store in 1979.
Wow. What a way to lose your career.
He was married and had a kid. Nuts.
It's not. That's crazy.
It's just completely.
Wow.
I don't even know what to say about that. It's just completely insane.
Yeah.
Ugh. Well, you happy to be back, or are you guys like mixed
Yeah, man.
feelings, or
I'm looking forward to come see you guys.
yeah? It's supposed to actually be nice around here finally, like on after tomorrow. I think it's supposed to be like 70
Yeah.
on Tuesday or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, do you want to introduce Jeff and then we can go from there?
Yeah. So I reached out to Jeff. His YouTube page is the Real Martian. Really interesting guy. He lives out, I think, in Oregon, I believe.
I think it's Washington
Um,
State, maybe.
I think he
Could
grew
be.
up in
Or maybe
Washington.
Oregon.
I
Maybe
think
Oregon.
yeah, I think yeah. And he kind of wanted to be an astronaut. That didn't work out, but he still has this dream in his heart that he wants to, I don't know, pursue. So it was just a really interesting conversation with him. He's probably the smartest person I've ever talked to. He just has a really interesting outlook on life, and he's doing some really interesting things. So I don't want to give away too much, but kind of roll it over to Jeff.
Yeah, let's do that. I was like, we were talking to him, was it like last week or something like that, and he's getting into stuff, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I'm struggling to keep up on some of it, and but it was just it was cool just what he's doing, and I mean, I think we got into some things specific to the technical aspect of it, but also, you know, more general kind of conversation just about what this could potentially turn into. We talked a little about social media and things like that, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a cool conversation. So yeah, let's roll over to the Real Martian.
Good morning.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
Not bad. How about yourself?
Doing good. My name's Adam. Greg is with me also here. We're part of Two Dudes in Their 30s podcast.
Good morning. Sweet.
Yeah, man. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a background in how you kind of got to where you are now? Like you have a huge aquaponics setup. You have awesome like grow beds for producing food. And obviously, I don't think that was your vision as a child, but you want to kind of run us down?
Kind of like from the beginning type of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
How'd we get here?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. A long time ago in a galaxy not so far away, I wanted to be an astronaut. So I started a path, back when I was 19 or something like that. And I started, hey, I got to go to college. I got to do this stuff. So I started working on pre-college credits. And then I found Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I applied to them and got accepted amazingly. I partied a little too much when I was taking my pre-credits, so my GPA wasn't the best on the planet. Went there, joined ROTC in the Air Force, and my game plan was to become a flight test pilot because that was the highest probability, or flight test engineer because I wasn't going to be a pilot. And that was the highest probability of becoming an astronaut. So I graduated with honors from Embry-Riddle as an aerospace engineer. I joined the Air Force, successfully made it through every basic training and everything, and officer school, and was assigned to Los Angeles Air Force Base, where I was a systems engineer for classified satellite programs. And then got transferred to the National Reconnaissance Office, which is based out of D.C., so came over to the East Coast with you guys. Spent quite a few years there working on really cool stuff. Deployed to, and then as part of that, I was working on my flight test engineer package. So in the Air Force, you have to go through all these different schools and all this process stuff, and you got to have good reviews and do a really good job so that you can get selected for these really cool positions that could help you become an astronaut. So I was working on getting the package put together. I had 2-star general support on it, and I started going through the medical exams and everything, and they found in my heart I have what's called a right bundle branch block. So it's my heart flutters sometimes. And then I had a bulge disc as well. So basically, medically, I wasn't going to be able to compete with anyone. So I said, well, this sucks. What am I going to do now? So just like everybody else who has to deal with midlife crisis, I decided to deploy to Iraq because that's the most common thing to do. So I deployed to Iraq for 8 months where I supported the 18th Airborne Corps, actually. So I was in the Air Force, but that's the Army. And I supported them in Baghdad, and it was an amazing experience. Really long days, but just really, really amazing. And this next part's going to sound a little weird, but it's absolutely the truth. I heard God telling me, dude, you need to go home. And which is weird because I was like working on my way to kind of go through schools in the Air Force. And he's like, no, you need to go home. So at the end of my deployment, I got back to States and I was like, well, I need to separate from the Air Force. I didn't have a job. Didn't know what I was going to do, but man, I was like, it's one of the, like I said, it sounds weird, but man, it's the truth. So I did separate. I came back home to Washington State. That's where I'm born and raised. And 6 months after I got here, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So if that's not some evidence for you, I don't know what is. But so I went through his cancer. He was just a few months away from retiring, diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer that had spread throughout his entire body, in his bones. It was really horrible. And that's a very important story because my dad and I were basically, they called us the clones. I have no hair, he has hair, but we look exactly the same. We think exactly the same. We act exactly the same. Our interests were exactly the same. And he was always big into science fiction. I mean, he really got me started into space. Just thinking about it, he and I watched Star Trek together when I was a kid, and just a whole lot of stuff that he really influenced me on. And one of the big ones was living off grid. He was kind of a mountain man. We go ride horses, and he owned horses that I now own. And it's like, man, this is really cool. We want to kind of live off grid. So he and I started working on it well before he got sick. And when he did pass away, it was like, man, he was 65. And it's that moment when you realize that, no kidding, your life really is going to end someday, and you start to go, well, what am I doing with it? And, so I got this aerospace engineering degree. I ended up getting a job at a subsidiary of the Boeing company here in Washington. I'm a program manager, so I got a great job, make good money. But I'm still sitting here going, what am I doing with my life? After he died, it really, really made me sit there and go, I need to do something with these skills and these gifts and the resources I've been given. So, like I said, before he passed away, I had started researching. And in total, it took me 5 years of reading academic papers, books, searching the web, just trying to collect all this information to look at what does it really take to be self-sustaining and, living off the grid, which has nothing to do with space initially. And so after 5 years, and then he passed away, I decided, we're gonna design this thing. So I spent a year using some of the computer tools that I have and just engineering discipline and design the system that you see. And the idea is that it can produce its own energy, and it can produce its own food for a family of 4. It can also take in waste, so it would be like carbon neutral or carbon negative, so it can actually consume CO2 from the environment and help just essentially make things better. So ended up with the core components of the system being solar power, the anaerobic digester, which consumes waste and then turns it into methane, and what's called digestate, which is organic fertilizer that you can put back into the system if you so choose. Also have the aquaponics, so you got the fish as your protein source, and then you need to get rid of that fish waste, so you send it up to the beds and you do the aquaponic beds, and then they filter out the waste and return nice clean water. We use vertical farming so that we make 1 square foot of land, we're 2, trying to help feed the world's population in the future. The building itself is an interesting aspect of the design. We need a structure that's strong enough to hold everything and deal with by hold everything, I mean the snow. We get a ton of snow here, and it has to put up with 75 mile per hour winds because we get those here as well. So we couldn't use a standard greenhouse because of those two things, but in addition, the standard greenhouse wasn't high enough. It wasn't tall enough to do vertical farming the way that we needed to. So the building itself is a key piece of the system, and we ended up having to put a whole new roof on it just because we needed more light in the system than what we were getting. So, we're on year 3 now of the build, and another key piece of it is automation, right? So we decided to go really big on this first build, and the reason for it is using the same premise as an electrical engineer would use when they build a circuit board. Most people know circuit boards like their cell phones. They're like, hey, this is really small, and some people may not know that it probably started off being something huge called a breadboard, and then as they build it, they make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're using that same premise here is just don't worry about how big it is. Just, find the parts that you can buy easily today so you can prototype it and get them all together and get everything working. And so that's why we have such a big facility. We also needed it to be large enough to where it can generate some money, right? Because we got to pay for this thing. So the facility we ended up having is big enough to, in its non-money making configuration, it could feed 4 families of 4 every day, forever. And that's 4 adults. It produces enough calories to keep them all fed, and then there's enough space to have a bunch of different crops that are in there. So we actually have it configured in a hybrid mode right now where it's actually producing food for us to eat and experiment with growing different things, but it's also configured for microgreen sales so we can help pay for everything. So microgreens allow us to pay for wintertime operations, essentially.
That was kind of going to lead into the next question is like, how in the world do you afford all of this? Because it looks like you have like at least $100,000 invested of your own money from the videos I've watched. How do you budget that, finance that, and how
Sure.
do you see that going forward?
It's a good question. Well, so like I said, the key thing was my dad's death and just really sitting there and, questioning what's important about life and where do you put your resources at that point. And deciding to take this risk, my wife and I sat down and I kind of drew everything out on paper. I came up with some initial estimates. We actually went after funding a few different ways, but she and I spoke, and so the people that we're looking at for contributing funds, they basically it was a normal investor, and he's like, well, this is really cool thing on paper, but if I don't see it, I can't really be part of it. I need to know that you're more than just a crazy whack. So my wife and I sat down and we said, well, how can we streamline this thing? Because the original design was like $1.5 million. It was ridiculous. I had it estimated all the way down to a valve. I had to find all these parts all over the internet. Like I said, it's a whole year's worth of effort, and I found all these different parts. And there's no way we're going to spend $1.5 million. That's not even close to realistic. So we skinned it down to the absolute bare essentials. We cashed out a huge chunk of retirement that we had, and then between tax returns, the retirement, what else did we have? We did get some help from family members. We did start the GoFundMe account, Patreon. YouTube was a big part of it. Basically we're scraping every dollar we possibly can into paying for it, and then we spread it out over a few years. You're right. Right now we're about $250,000 into it of our own money, and we're at the point where the microgreens, if we can get about 4 more customers, will be our initial break even, which means we're covering the majority of all the operating costs. We're not getting paid yet. It's not cash flow positive. It's just not sucking us dry. So the microgreens were a key piece of being able to pay for things. And at its max, we need to be getting about $3,300 a month off of those microgreen sales. And that covers our electricity, trash, the servers, internet connections, fuel for the heater in the winter. Quite a bit of stuff there. The solar power was huge in helping offset the cost, because electricity, like when you do a system like this, it's all about power. If you're going to grow inside, it's all about power. So I guess that's the answer.
For someone that's listening that might not understand the grand sizes, how big is this habitat that you call it?
Yeah, Hab 1 is 80 feet long by 40 feet wide by 22 feet tall at its peak.
All right, and how many grow beds do you have running right now?
That is a little bit trickier question. There are 18 vertical beds, meaning there's 18 vertical sections, and each of the sections has various levels of beds in it. But let's see, we're at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 total grow beds right now, including microgreens.
And then on the bottom side of each of those, you have fish literally swimming around. Yep. And producing waste, and then the waste turns into food and nutrients for the grow beds. That's
correct. Yep. Yeah, we have rainbow trout swimming underneath each lane. In fact, we just got our newest shipment of trout in. 2 years ago when we first started, we killed a whole bunch of trout, unfortunately. I had the original pumps for the system were actually pool pumps. And there was a reason for it being that big, but the inlet on that pool pump I had a screen over the front of, but the fish found a way to get around the screen and they got sucked up into that pump.
Oh.
And one day I come up and I'm like, why is the pump running so slow? There's hardly any water coming out. And I go and I take the top off the filter and I'm like, it was like sardines. They had all been just shoved in there.
Ouch.
So we killed like 100 fish, just in that one shot, little 2-inchers. And then last summer, actually, we had a power outage in the middle of summer, completely unplanned and unthought of. And when the power goes out in the summer, you don't really notice it until too late because you're like, well, I don't have to turn lights on. I kind of, water still runs because there's pressure in the tank. You don't really know it's kind of off until you go, wait a second, the power's off. Oh, crap. So I ran out to the building and it was hot. When it's hot, there's less oxygen in the water. And when the system's not working, then the fish start to suffocate. So I got out there and fish were starting to go belly up. And the power was still out. And this is before we had all of our backup systems in place that we do now. So I'm grabbing all these fish and throwing them into buckets and putting them on ice. And they died, of course, but I cut them all up and ate them, which we've been wanting to figure out, like, do the fish taste good? That's a common question we get. And the answer is, yeah, they taste like normal trout. They're delicious, nice, big, white meat. It's beautiful. And we ended up smoking them, and they tasted awesome. But that killed about another 50 fish. So the system was running kind of low on fish, so we had to go get some more and put them in. But all the folks that do aquaponics will tell you, you're not really doing aquaponics till you kill a bunch of fish. So we're doing aquaponics.
So besides the fish tragedy, what would you say is your other like biggest lesson learned, or maybe error that you made that you'd like to give advice to people if they ever want to try this?
Ooh.
Well, I have a lot. There's lots of mistakes I made. I think that's why.
That's how you learn, though,
about
right?
Your channel too is that you're not afraid. You're not afraid to share it. Like you're learning and growing every day. It's awesome to watch. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I am afraid to share it because, man, I hate the trolls. It hurts when you don't think of everything. But I am human, and you just got to deal with it. But I do want people to learn from the mistakes I've made. I think what we're doing that's different than other people is this is a systems integration activity. Like, you could go find a bunch of people that have solar power, and you can find a bunch of people who are living off the grid, and you can find people who are doing aquaponics way better than we're doing aquaponics, and you can find anaerobic digesters out there, and you can find people making their own Arduinos and own circuit boards and writing their own code. But I haven't been able to find in all my time looking someone who's doing a systems integration on the level that we are, where we bring all those things together and we figure out how they interact with each other. We figure out the right ratios of interaction, you might say, and we really dial it in and make it work. And I think that's what we're doing that's different. In that process, mistakes that I've made, I don't know if it's a mistake, but it definitely has caused problems, and that is I could have spent more time in design. And, in my job, my team, they would be laughing right now if they heard this. Sometimes you could spend forever thinking. And so there is a point where you have to say, I'm done thinking and I need to go do. And at work, as a program manager, I'm all about doing things, like make it happen, like stop talking, let's go do it. I think I probably should have spent just a little bit more time thinking about some things. But honestly, had I done that, we wouldn't be where we're at. We're borderline like turning the corner on success right now. We're kind of gone through the dark times and we're starting to become successful. So if I would have waited longer, I'm not sure if it would have been good. But what it would have allowed me to do is to do a little more calculations on probably the biggest mistake I made, which is the footings on the lanes. So we have these big, tall, vertical structures, and then the fish tanks sit down below them, and that's a design. There's a design reason for that. And then the footings sit right off to the side of the fish tanks. So the original calculations I did said, okay, well, water's going to be filling this fish tank that's 2 feet wide by 3 feet deep, and then it's the length of the entire lane. And that water is going to be pushing up against the dirt, so it's going to help keep the dirt in place. And that was wrong. That was totally wrong. So I've had lots of problems with footings, and that creates a safety issue. So we've had to redo a bunch of the footings. We had to basically tear down everything and rebuild the footings. And even after I rebuilt it, the footings still aren't very good. So I would have done something, in hindsight, completely different with that. But there are so many other mistakes that I've made that were like, okay, well, this was unplanned. This wasn't supposed to go like this. This isn't. And there's just a bunch of stuff you didn't think of. Like this morning, I'm working on our exhaust fan, which is hugely important. You think a fan, whoop-de-doo, that's not that big a deal. Turn it on, turn it off. But when you have automation that's supposed to keep track of all this stuff for you, you have to think of all the logic, right? Because computers are stupid. They only do what they're told for now. So hopefully they stay that way, but we'll probably build Skynet. But so this exhaust fan has been a real challenge. I've been working through the logic over and over and over, and there's always this little piece of logic that you don't think of, where the code gets stuck in a logical loop that you just didn't think of, and there's a defect. So you got to go track down where that logical problem is at and reprogram everything. But everything in the system is so dependent on everything else working that when one piece of logic with the exhaust fan goes wrong, for example, the exhaust fan doesn't turn on. It's beautiful outside. The new roof allows light in. That light comes in, and it doesn't go out. It just gets sucked in. So all of a sudden your temperatures start increasing, but then that means the water that's going into the grow bed starts to increase in temperature, which means the oxygen in the fish tank starts to drop. The plants, some of them like the warmer water, but other ones like the colder water. And then if my wife is out there working, she's starting to turn into she's getting cooked out there. It turns into an oven, and things just start to fail. And then with temperature increases, mechanical components start to fail. Plastic starts to weaken. Structural integrity starts to drop. It's like, wow, that fan's really damn important. So there's a whole bunch of things just like that. The valves on the bed controlling the water flow, having backups when things fail, just not thinking of every single possible way that something could go wrong has been a huge learning experience. And writing software that deals with every one of those different conditions, I think that's something that we have to offer as well. It's just we're figuring all these things out. So that's the answer to that. I talk too much. Sorry, you guys go.
No. You're supposed to talk.
I think it's really interesting. No, I just want to share, for the listeners, you were actually nominated and awarded the Human of the Year from Vice recently. What kind of honor, or how does that kind of play out? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was really cool. My wife and I, they came out here and they spent it was like a whole day that they were out here with us and going through everything. And it was a really cool experience. We're really honored to even be considered for it. It was totally out of the blue for me. It's like, hey, we want to put you up there on the Humans of the Year. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. As far as real, heartfelt feelings about it is every day that I wake up, I wonder if I'm crazy, which I think the answer is yes. But I mean, really, am I just being stupid? Did I just blow $250,000? That's a house. There are people who would kill for that, and who are working so hard to get that. And I just built this thing. Are my priorities right? Am I doing the right thing? Is this risk worth it? My wife and I sacrifice a lot. We sacrifice a lot in our relationship. We sacrifice a lot with family. We sacrifice a lot with friends. This has been a huge pioneering experience, and I use that term on purpose. You can think of the old pioneers, they're out there by themselves. They took a huge risk, and there's danger at every turn. And we don't have people trying to kill us, and there's animals not trying to kill us, but as far as stress goes, it's a heavy burden, and there's a lot of doubt. So having someone come in like Motherboard, Vice, and say, hey, we think what you're doing is really cool, and we recognize it, and we think it's going to help in the future is reaffirming. And we actually are doing this for really good reasons. It's cool to think about going to space. I think this system could go to space. I'm going to actually be speaking at the International Space Development Conference. They asked me to come and talk about this experience, similar like how you guys asked me. And that's way cool to be thinking about space. But the reason we're building this is to help us here on Earth. There's some problems coming up that regardless of your political views and everything else that are out there today, like if you just look at the world with common sense, the basic math of the fact that we keep increasing in population, and it's within our lifetime. In the year 2050, the population will be so large that we have to increase our agricultural output by 75%. And like the best we can do, I think, is when I calculated my stuff and looked at the reports and everything, is like 23.5. So, you could be really negative and be like, well, don't worry, war, plague, famine, it'll take care of that. Systems, I'm talking back in biology class, by the way, like this is basic stuff, non-political. When populations get large enough, there's a function called a logistics function. And given the amount of resources and everything that is available to that population, it'll start to stabilize. So if you look at a curve, it'll grow given the amount of resources it has, and then it'll oscillate around its resources as people die or the population dies and then grows and dies and grows, but it'll stay along that logistic curve. So eventually we just run out of resources, and then we start putting in place controls as a population. Again, it's mice, bacteria, humans, dogs, cats. It doesn't matter which one. They all follow that logistics curve. So I don't really want to bank on the idea of having to eat Soylent Green or anything like that in the future. So my wife and I sat down, and, again, my faith comes in. We're praying every night. We're like, thank you, God, for this food. And, please help those attain food who don't have any. And we did that for years. And then one day, part of all this, my dad dying thing, he's like, well, why don't you do something about it? And that's what I put you there for, and it's like, oh, aha, got it. You gave me these skills and this vision and all this, the resources, and, and let's go build this thing and help people. And you start looking at not just food, but water. I think it was NASA. They have their ground penetrating radar satellites up there, and they noticed that, hey, 2/3 of the water is fresh water, or 2/3 of the world's fresh water underground reservoirs are not filling. They're emptying faster than they can fill. Now, on top of the ground, there's lots of water, but we don't have any ways to harvest it or to harvest it effectively, and not destroy the environment. So, of course, the planet's covered in ocean, so desalination plants are great, but we know when we put those in place, usually they basically kind of destroy the local environment because of the brackish water that they're putting back in. It messes up the water content, but you could probably solve that somehow if you had a nuclear power plant and a lot of energy close by. You could also harvest rainwater coming off of the mountains and snow melt. We have floods every year, but we have no way to take water from the flooded area and move it to the area that needs water. If we had a pipeline across all the nations that could move water, that would solve that problem. So I say all that to say people resort to underground wells. And California is just a great example of how population keeps growing and the groundwater is needed it's clean, it's readily available, it's affordable for the farmers. They pump it out and they put it on their fields, but they pumped out so much water that the ground is literally sinking. And those reservoirs just are not filling up as fast as we use them. It just takes too much time for the water to penetrate. So we looked at those things and we're like, let's do something. And so we did. And here we are. And this system, when we start getting it figured out, with HAB 2, what we want to do is we need to find funding for it first, but because we're done. We're tapped. We've done everything we could. We've cashed out what we could, and here we are. But HAB 2 is supposed to start getting smaller. And it'll be the first real step into, okay, we figured out how to get all these systems to work. Now, how do we get them to work more efficiently, and how do we make it all smaller so that a normal family of four could have this system and produce food that they need, and potentially clean water as well could come out of the system, and energy. It's not just the food, it's the energy as well. so that you could send this to places that are hungry. We would love to be able to sell the system to a nonprofit that takes it over to Africa or takes it to developing countries where they need this type of thing, and they can have it if the cultural fit is right. That's always a challenge, but that would be great. Or even just American families of four, they want to have their own food and their own energy, plop this thing in their backyard, and they can still take little Johnny to football practice. Mom and dad can go out on a date and not have to be tied to the system, which is what farmers have to do. That's what we have to do right now. Is without the automation, we have to be here monitoring every single thing. And if you leave a valve on, you could destroy everything. So that's where we want to get to, and our reasons for doing it are cool. So when we got the motherboard thing, it was like, hey, yeah, we really are trying to do something right here, trying to do something good. We're trying to be like decent human beings and help. So motherboard was cool when we got that.
So this is probably not the right comparison at all, but as I was watching some of the videos the other day, I was kind of thinking like, this could be something that you could eventually kind of shrink down and be used for the masses. And I'm not a scientific or mathematical person at all, so this is all kind of interesting to me. It's probably above my head, but it kind of reminded me of like when the computer first came out. I mean, it took up like a whole room, right? And it wasn't for personal use. And then I'm thinking back to even when I was a kid, like in the 80s and the 90s, when my dad brought a computer home and it was just green screen, Yeah. And then like the first cell phone and now the iPhone, whatever. Like this stuff does kind of scale and shrink and become usable, and it seems like you're on the cusp of something that's obviously much more important than those things, but that could potentially be world changing. If that's too grandiose, I don't know, but it seems like that's a possibility. I don't know.
I agree. The word grandiose, I feel the same way, like how you said that. That's my same feeling. Like, well, I don't really want to say that we're trying to save the world, but we are. But I don't look at it that way. It's not the grandiose side. It's not the prideful side. It's like, no, it's actually humble confidence that we actually want to do something. And I'm certainly hopeful that your comment is exactly it. Is like, I think we are ground floor on the systems integration. I know Elon Musk's brother, he has a container farm thing that he's doing for restaurants, and it's like, that's one piece of it. That is one piece of a bigger project. Solar panels, everything, like I said, they all have to come together. And I think so far, I feel that we're the ones that have all of these things coming together. So I think there is the chance that we could be first. But there could be someone somewhere else that has done stuff. I just haven't found them. So I certainly hope we are, and I think the approach we're taking is a systematic one, meaning like I'm not just jumping into things. Sometimes on YouTube people think that, and sometimes like with small stuff I might say, well, I'll just try this. I just want to see if it works. I haven't sat down and thought about it. I'm just going to try it. There's certainly things I do like that, but when it came to this was a calculated, designed risk, and everything in it was thought of. And at least we went through, like I said, a year's worth of design. And then lots of building, rebuilding, fixing, keeping track of. We use project management practices. We actually have a backlog. We use Agile Scrum. We have budgets. We keep track of things. I mean, I run it like a business, and that's how we want it to be. I'm hoping someday maybe we could have the engineering company come out of this that is actually the one responsible for building these things across the planet, or whatever. There's lots of hope there. Yeah, I would love to see it blossom into something cool. I'm hoping that this conference that we're going to, maybe there's something that will come out of that. But I also have to keep my expectations at bay and not get super excited about things, because the letdown on the backside kind of hurts. So we're just going to keep moving ahead. We started eating salads out of the building 2 weeks ago. So it's first, for us, it's a small victory on that way to hopefully changing the world. We got green beans out of it, which is way cool. We're certainly eating the fish already, and we get plenty of microgreens. If you guys want microgreens, swing on by. We got plenty. But what do we have in there now? Tons of different lettuces, Swiss chard. We have kiwis growing. We have flowers growing. We have lavender growing. Garlic, which is normally not grown in aquaponics. We're trying to grow that. broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, green onions, green beans. We have a clementine tree, a grapefruit tree. We have a peach tree, an apple tree, a banana tree. We have cantaloupe. We have watermelon, Walla Walla sweet onions, strawberries. We have the Martian potatoes, the red potatoes, the Yukon potatoes. We have a ton of different herbs and spices, chamomile tea, echinacea, medicinal plants. No marijuana. We haven't grown any pot. I always get that question. You're sitting on a gold mine. Why don't you do this? I'm like, because the world's already stupid enough. I don't need help. I'll get yelled at for that one too. And corn on the cob. We got a whole bunch of corn growing. So when those things actually get harvested, I'll feel like we really have made it. And at least on the food side, we still got to get the digester going. So that is the power side of things. We've got to have that. And we've learned a lot about all these systems. And it's really like the space. I remember some episodes I did back when first we built it in the snow. Yeah, that first year was hell. It snowed. We had 8 feet of snow on the side of the building. It was deep. And I couldn't keep up with it. I have a full-time job. I have this build thing. We had heating problems, water problems. We had snow problems. And I'm out there trying to keep the solar panels clean. And that's when I was really into the Martian thing, and I was out there, and it made me feel like I was on Mars. Like, could you imagine a dust storm that came for months and covered up your solar panels, and that's your only source of electricity? Like, that dog will not hunt. We need some other way to have electricity. And as part of the design work that I did and the research, I already knew what my solution was, but it really solidified it, is you cannot depend on wind. You cannot depend on solar. Those are nice things to have, but you cannot depend on them. You need something that's more consistent and is just always there. And for what people like me and what we hope to provide to other people, what they can afford is a recycler. Let's take all that organic waste that you have, and I'll think of all those table scraps. Hey, I didn't eat all my dinner last night, and in America we throw that into the trash can. In other places they take it out of the trash can because it's worth so much. Well, you could put it into a digester, and that stuff turns back into things that the digestate that you could put on your plants, so you can keep growing more plants, and it turns into methane gas, which you could burn for electricity or for heat. There's your power, and there's always going to be waste. And so another question I get is, can you put human waste in there? The answer is you could. And in some places where they have anaerobic digesters, they do. So it's like your septic tank. And then you collect the gas off of it. But you should not use, it is not recommended to use the digestate for anything that has to do with food. The reason for that is humans tend to digest a lot of stuff that doesn't break down unless it gets really, really, really hot. So that's why at waste treatment plants, they basically boil everything to kill or destroy the bacteria or bad things that are in your body that just don't go away. But even if they do that, chemicals, like if you could think of someone on chemotherapy, think of all the chemicals that are in their body, and when they have excrement, it's in there. And you can't get rid of those without a lot of treatment. So you don't really want to be putting that on your food, is the bottom line. So, but you could use your waste to generate energy, and that's awesome. So that's why we chose the digester with the solar panels. So when there's snow-covered solar panels, there's still a way to generate some electricity without having to connect to the grid. That was very, very Mars-ish.
Nice. So, Greg, you're gonna have to take off in a few minutes here.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask real quick though. Just we haven't really touched much on the YouTube page. So how did that even come about? Like, that wasn't a goal. I don't think that was something that you were originally thought of, was it, when you were doing this whole thing? How did that all kind of happen? And what has that done for you? Sort of exposure, or you said comments. I know there's trolls, but like, what has that done for you guys as a whole?
Yeah. Well, let's see here. So my neighbor is Wrangler Star. Yeah. And he's, I think he's almost to 1 million subscribers. And Cody is awesome. He's just a great guy, really down to earth, and good people. So he and his wife came over one day, and we were just, hanging out like we normally do. And he went out and wanted to see the building. And so we get out there, and he's like, Jeff, do you mind if I record this? This is really cool. And I'm like, no, go for it. You know, I wasn't even thinking about YouTube or anything like that. And so while he was recording, he says, wow, you're kind of like the Real Martian, because the movie The Martian had just come out, you know, and it stuck. It totally stuck. I'm like, that's actually a really cool name. You know, I'm totally geeking out right now. Yeah, I guess I am. And so we talked afterwards, and he put a video up, one he took, and it, like, within a few minutes, it had like 80,000 views on it. And people were just screaming to Jeff, you need to start your own channel. And I was already tapped. I was already exhausted. I already had everything going, you know. I was like, oh my goodness. But being able to share and potentially make some money to help pay for things was certainly enticing. So we decided to do it and created our first, you know, video. I think it was Christmas Eve 2 years ago. I was out there. It was freezing cold. The camera sucked. The camera wouldn't even work. It was so freaking cold out there. It was like below freezing. And it looked way cool, though. It looked like just you're on Mars. And, you know, it jumped. We launched it. I was hoping to get just 1,000 subscribers between Christmas Eve and the end of the year. And, like, we got 1,000 subscribers in the first 5 minutes. It just took off. And so we kept building it. Kept doing more videos, keep doing more videos. I was trying to do a video every day this year, but man, I just can't keep up with everything. I need like a little crew here helping me out with all this stuff. But that's how YouTube started. And now we're doing it. We love sharing. Sharing's way cool. I got some subscribers who've been with me from the very beginning. They're very blunt and they're very helpful. And they look at it, it's like social creation, social engineering, not in the negative way, but like there's a bunch of people trying to help me engineer and solve problems. It's like mission control at NASA. So when I talk to them, it's just like, you know, Mark Watney in The Martian, you know, waiting to hear with a delay from NASA, hey, here's what I'm doing. Wait. Okay, here's what NASA thinks you should do. And in some cases, I've already done it because I can't wait. In other cases, I have to wait for NASA mission control, in my case, to tell me, you know, their ideas. So they actually help out. So we share our information so other people won't make our same mistakes. But then there's also people who are helping us not make more mistakes. And then, of course, there's the freaking trolls, man. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with those people. Something is really wrong with those people. I do not know why. I'm sure you guys have to deal with it too. It's like, gee whiz, what is wrong with you? Like, are you even human? Or are you just a dick? Anyway, so, like, can't you see we're trying? I mean, you know, but that doesn't matter. And
some people are just out to be negative. They're out to, like, that's what they enjoy, is being negative.
Oh man, I would hate to have a life like that.
Yeah, it's
where,
too bad.
I wake up
It'd be horrible.
Yeah, like, what am I going to do today? I'm going to be the biggest dick I possibly can be. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be negative. Everything sucks around me. I suck. You suck. I'm going to make you feel more sucky than me, so I feel at least halfway good.
That's what it is.
Like,
I think.
Yeah, I actually feel bad for those people. We need to have a talk about a savior in their case because they need some help. Anyway, YouTube's been a great experience. It's been rocky, but overall good, overall positive.
Awesome. Hey, we really thank you for your time, man. We want to wrap up probably this conversation. I go, Greg, you got a wedding to go to here today.
Ooh, yeah, don't be late for that. Is it yours? No. You've already got a ring on your finger.
Yeah, I'm good. It's actually a 2-year-old's birthday party, actually.
All right.
It's all good. And then we got the baptism tomorrow for the baby, so it's a crazy weekend. But it's all
very
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you want to tell everybody, I mean, obviously we talked about the YouTube channel. It's what is it, The Real Martian, all kind of one word together? That's where people can find you. And then anywhere else online, or is that the main spot?
TheRealMartian.com will take you to our YouTube channel. We're on Facebook, Twitter, on Patreon, GoFundMe, all those places got us on it, so you can check us out there. I'm not very good with keeping up on Facebook and Twitter, but people can see when I post stuff on there, usually YouTube postings, you know, when they go up. That's where you can find us at. Look forward to seeing them online.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
No
Thanks
problem.
so much. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, good luck.
Take care, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, so that was our conversation with Jeff, aka the Real Martian. We had some. Wow, that was like he really went deep. He's got some just a great thing going there. You should definitely check out his YouTube channel. Just search the Real Martian. You'll be able to pull him up very quickly. He's also on Facebook. I think on Twitter he said as well, but YouTube is really where he's at to kind of find out where he's going. Search Motherboard Revice for the article about him and the video. It was really cool stuff. That's how we found out about him. And, good luck to him at the upcoming conference that he mentioned as well. Hopefully that goes well for him.
Yeah. So check out his social media, The Real Martian on YouTube, and leave him a comment. Say you listen to him, on 2Dudes30. But thank you very much for another week with us. As always, check out our socials. Reach out to us on our Instagram, 2Dudes30, or on Facebook. But looking forward to the next week.
Cool, man. If you like what you hear and you're listening to us, and we're on episode 12 now, just go do us a favor. If you're on iTunes, leave a rating and review on the show. We'd very much appreciate that. That just helps other people find the show more. And we're going to kind of get back on schedule after having Austin on last week. We're back to Enigmatic Heart. Adam, looking forward to catching up with you in person this upcoming week. Glad to have you guys back, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
Awesome, man. Thanks again.
I like this.
That's a microphone. Want to sing a song?
Uh-huh.
Hurry up. Go ahead.
I will nobody go round and round and down. People want to go up and down, and further down.
You say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.